mothers. Yes, it was good for our mothers. It was good for our mothers. It's good enough for me. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me.
Another psychological mechanism that sets us up for religion is a concept the anthropologists call the Golden Age syndrome. This mechanism refers to the idea that the past was so much better, which is something especially prevalent in older people. This phenomenon actually has a very simple explanation. The brain is set up to process negative information faster than positive. This ensures that one has a better chance of escaping or overcoming the negative. In the wild, this is essential to survival. As a side effect, however, the immediate bad is very prevalent in our minds. On top of this, our brains are designed to better store good memories and purge the bad. If we remember the bad over the good, depression and suicide rates would be a heck of a lot higher. As a side effect, in our minds, the past was always better. Following this logic trail, it's natural for humans to imagine that there was a point of a perfect world long before, and the world is gradually getting worse until at one point it will be utterly destroyed. This natural mental process is most likely the reason why mysticism became so popular, as several cultures have an end-of-the-world myth. This is especially inherent because elders will think that things were so much better in childhood and teach their children that it was. On top of that, they will pass down stories of their great ancestors orally, and because stories were their only form of entertainment, each shaman would tend to add something to the story to make it more interesting, until over a few generations the real story and person would be unrecognizable from the real person. From these, people would assume that anything older must be better or holy, as it appears that the people before us were geniuses and we today are too dumb to understand because we have lost knowledge. Many people take this view toward our founding fathers and the Constitution. As a creationist, I was told that it was a good probability that because Adam had walked with God, Adam would have had access to all sorts of various knowledge, including metalworking, agriculture, and astronomy. When some people fell away from God, they lost some of this knowledge, and they moved backwards, becoming more primitive and becoming stone tool users or cavemen. They explained our evolutionary ancestral links as dietarily deformed humans who fell from God and ignored or lost the knowledge that Adam had passed down. Much of this knowledge was lost in the flood, and it was thought that some people were way more advanced pre-flood than post-flood. Anecdotal evidence they use is of a fossil found that they believe to be a spark plug, but it's been lost since the 50s, of course. This Atlantean-style system of myth is linked directly to the Golden Age syndrome. Atlantis to the apocalypse, wonderful to destruction. They poorly invoke the second law of thermodynamics. Actually, the reason why these skills were mentioned at the beginning of the Bible was because literacy did not exist in modern Palestine until the Bronze Age, about 1000 BC, which people who had passed on oral tradition would have no idea that their ancestors had once been stone tool-using hunter-gatherers. This blind faith in old texts is part of our wiring, which is why faith in the Bible is so easy for some people. The ancient Romans allow freedom of religion to anyone with an ancient religion for this reason. As Christian religion was new, it was persecuted for going against the old. Stories also only capture the good or important parts of history, giving the illusion that the past was so much better. In this day and age, television and books have continued to generate this illusion and fantasy, as books and television are stories about ideals and rarely about actual reality. Penn and Teller did a bullshit episode on the good old days, and there were people who really believed that Leave It to Beaver was the norm in the 50s. However, in those days, violence, drug and alcohol abuse, racism, and misogyny were much more rampant. Post-traumatic stress disorder was considered just being a man, which caused domestic violence to be considered fairly normal. More children are graduating college and getting degrees than ever before. The religious right blames turning away from God, eliminating prayer in school, and legalizing of abortions and women getting out of the homes as a reason for all of us no longer being the Cleaver family, when the Cleavers never existed. Crime rates have actually decreased by 20% in 20 years. This may no longer be true in the recession. However, the news coverage of violence has increased by 600% in the U.S., giving it the appearance that things have gotten much worse. As a matter of fact, morality has been evolving at an exponential rate if you look at the past. The majority of this is based on the new ways to transfer information. If you compare Hitler to Genghis Khan or even King David, the brutality Hitler used only seems worse because of the technology. Hitler was hardly the fringe for his time, as racism, eugenics, and ethnic cleansing were touted by many in the U.S. and practiced in many states. Many black and Native American women in the early 1900s were systematically sterilized to ensure they would not outbreed the white race. However, because of information and freedom of speech, racism, sexism, and even homophobia are considered deployed by a number of people, rising exponentially. Richard Dawkins compared it to Moore's Law, where technology's capacity will begin to increase exponentially as the technology prior acts as scaffolding, making it possible for the next phase of technology to be bigger and better. The same is true about morality and ethics. One generation increases their morality and self-awareness, and their children build upon it, tossing away their parents' old beliefs, viewing them as barbaric. My stepdad, who died a few years ago at the age of 72, made me both cringe and laugh when he used the phrase "colored people," which is a much better phrase than he used to use before his children made him aware of the negative effects of racism. People who wish for a time in the past really would be even less content in the past. My music collection and ability to learn new things is ridiculously more than that of people just 10 years ago. I do not have to fear that my future children will die of some easily cured childhood disease thanks to improved medicine and vaccinations. Unfortunately, the Golden Age syndrome will also blind people to the fact that vaccines are what gave them the ability to have the choice in vaccinating today. I'm also allowed access to air conditioning, clean running water, and water to drink. History is smelly, as getting a warm bath around then was usually done very rarely, as work needed to pour up a bath was rarely considered more important than avoiding famine. Being aware of the way our brains are programmed is important for us in overcoming concepts like Golden Age syndrome. Being skeptical of the past is only a construct and a tool, but it will give you a much healthier view of both yourself and the world.